This is the video for learning outcome 5, where we learn all about research data. There's quite a lot of different points on the specification for this learning outcome. So we're going to look at primary and secondary research, why we actually do research, and how to analyse it. So let's start with primary and secondary research. Primary research is something that has been done first hand. It's something that you've done for the first time to gain new data. So anything that you are doing yourself that is not being done before, that you are doing to gather some new information. One example is a questionnaire, or sometimes called a survey. Now you can do a survey or a questionnaire either on paper or through digital or online means. What that means is you can either type up a survey or write one out by hand and give it out to people on paper. Obviously this allows kind of a more one-to-one personal approach, but you can get more kind of people to do it if you do it online, and you can often get it where it automatically works out the responses. So in other words, you can make some graphs. You can get all of your data automatically totaled up if you do it on a digital or online method. So the advantages of a questionnaire is that you can gather either qualitative or quantitative data. Disadvantage is that it can be bothersome to complete and collate the data. Sometimes you might not get very good responses because people can't be bothered or they're not very interested in what you're asking them. An interview is a really personal, up-close way of gathering feedback from somebody. The advantage is that you can get a lot of useful information and detailed feedback. The disadvantage is it's time-consuming and it's very expensive, especially if done on a large scale, as in with more than one person. A focus group is where it's similar to an interview but with a large group of people. And what this allows is obviously a lot more information to be gathered than just with a one-to-one interview. However, these can obviously be very expensive and difficult to set up. And what we mean by that is, obviously if you've got to pay every member of the focus group, then that's going to start adding up quite quickly. And also you might not always get the best people in your focus group. The advantage of a focus group is you can get fast and useful detailed information about people's feelings and responses to your products. Now with surveys, we mentioned qualitative and quantitative data. You need to know what both of these are and give an example. So quantitative data is when you get a quantity of information. So in other words, you are getting data that can be measured numerically. This means that we can make charts and graphs from it, and we can work out percentages and averages. It allows us to see what trends are going on very quickly and easily from a survey. For example, on this slide you can see some example questions that you might use to get quantitative data. If you gave 100 of these surveys out to somebody that was looking at your product, then you'd quickly be able to see how many people were in a particular age range. You'd be able to see what gender they were, and you'd be able to gather some sort of social class. Therefore, you'd be able to create an audience profile, like a demographic, of who is looking at your product and what they think. So straight away, if you gave out all your surveys to a sixth form, you'd see that they were all in the 15 to 18 bracket. You'd probably have a roughly even split with gender, male and female, and you'd have under 10,000 as their yearly salary. So you can see what kind of social class they're in, what gender they're in, and what age range they're in. And then when you gather their feedback, you can kind of store all of that feedback and analyze it just for that group of people. Then you could do the same thing for a load of people who are over 18, and you start kind of developing a trend and seeing what people think from the different demographics. The disadvantage of using quantitative data is that you don't always get a real explanation of why. For example, you might be able to say 97% of people like your film, but why? Why did the 3% not like it? So you can use something called qualitative data, which is where you get more quality. So this is where you use questions which are more open-ended questions will give you more descriptive data that you can actually get some insight from. So these questions here are a little bit of an example of what you can use qualitative data for. The first question is a quantitative data. It's a closed question. Do you either like it or you don't? Now this would obviously give you a percentage of people that like the movie. This is something that you see on like Google. If you type in Skyfall, it'll say something like 86% of people like it. Now that's good, but why don't the 16% like it? Why do the 86% like it? So using questions like please explain some of the things you liked, or please explain some points that you didn't like, that allows you to get some more insight into the audience and what they think. Secondary research is when you use data or findings from research that's already been undertaken. So in other words, it's second-hand research. It's when you're using things that have already been created. The internet is obviously a massive source of secondary research nowadays. People use search engines to find out loads of different information in different formats. The advantage of this is there's huge amounts of data online. However, the disadvantage is that sometimes the information is biased or inaccurate. Books and journals are a really useful way of gaining information. One of the advantages of this is they're usually written by real authors, so the good standard of English, good standard of research, and they can be really, really useful. However, it's very time consuming to read through all of the different books or to read through all of the information that's stored inside. Another disadvantage is it's sometimes out of date. The book could be written a long time ago. Similarly, with magazines in newspapers, they can be written by professional journalists and writers, so you get a good standard of information. However, this is sometimes difficult because there's such a vast array of choices of different magazines and newspapers. It's often difficult to find. For example, magazines and newspapers could be used as research for a real life film, so some sort of documentary or a film that's based on real events. You could go and study and research all of the newspapers that were written at that time. That would allow you to get insight of what the people were feeling, what the media were saying, and that kind of thing from that time period. Good example of this would be a film like Zodiac, which is based on a real life serial killer. They could have analysed all the different newspapers and gathered all of the information that was around at that time. Watching documentaries and news and factual programs about a particular topic can be a really useful source of secondary information. However, these could also be biased and could contain a lot of information that is not what you want. You might watch a full 2-hour documentary and only take away a couple of pieces of information. The main advantage is that obviously it's more interesting to watch than to read through a big full newspaper or hundreds of books trying to find one piece of information. This section will look at the purpose of research. Why do we do it in the first place? So the main purposes of research are to find out how many people the product is reaching or is going to reach. It's to find out who the people actually are, what are they like, what are their demographic and psychographic characteristics, what are the gaps in the market, and to get audience feedback. A gap in the market, if you're unaware of what this phrase means, is it's where you identify a group of potential customers who aren't purchasing a product, or the identification of the need of a new product or service. So when we've looked at Skyfall as an example, the gap in the market for that would be there are not many women who are interested in James Bond films, so they tried to attract that part of the audience. The companies that gathered the data for us, secondary research, could be using the 3 companies that you studied in Learn Now Come 4. So Pamco, Rajat and Barb, they gather all of the information about the audiences and their consumption data. So basically, when you're going to make a product, you want to get to reach as many customers as you possibly can, and you want to make as much profit as possible. So these companies can tell you who is using your product or who is using similar products, and then that will allow you to identify a gap in the market. Some words or keywords that are used to describe how many people are going to see your product and the type of category of people are circulation, readership, viewership, and listenership. Circulation is the number of people who purchase a print product. Readership is the number of people who read the product. Listenership is the people who listen to. And viewership is the people who view the TV and movies. So the circulation is the actual distribution. It's how many people in total are reading those particular things or viewing that particular product. And the others are the number of people who read, listen, and view. Another reason why we carry out research is to gather audience feedback. So this is a vital part in gaining awareness about a product. It can also help identify a potential gap in the market, because some people might not be interested in a particular demographic group, and that would allow you to try and target those people. Media institutions often use online methods to identify pros and cons about products and advertising campaigns. So that means they could use an online survey or some sort of forum where they could look at what are the positives and negatives about something they're thinking of developing. Social media nowadays is often used by audience members to give their personal opinion to the producer. This could be in the form of directly tweeting them or commenting on Facebook posts. An advantage of using social media as a tool to gain both quantitative and qualitative data is that it's free or cheap and easy to do. Online surveys are often also cheap, and many companies ask you to complete these about their service. This is a really quick way of gathering either quantitative or qualitative feedback, or sometimes both. One purpose of carrying out research is obviously to identify the gap in the market. This might not just be for audience methods, but also about the way that consumption is carried out or providing a product in a different way. So modern consumption methods are people using video on demand, and the way that started in the first place is by people identifying a gap in the market. People used to go to the video shop and go down there, stand in queues, take ages to make a choice, and while some people might enjoy that, other people wanted more convenience. So the company Love Film rented DVDs, but what they did was used to send them through the post to you. So you'd create a list and you'd receive different films that you wanted to watch off your list. Then people looked and thought, well, now that the internet speeds have got so much better, why don't we set up streaming services instead? And that's where Netflix and Amazon have taken over. When analysing audience research, it gives us certain possibilities that might arise. So one thing that it can do is to analyse the possibilities for spin-offs and sequels. It can look at why people might have enjoyed the first movie and why they might not have enjoyed the first movie. And when you're looking at a sequel, you can think of other possible things that you can include. You can use this audience research to see whether there actually is even a desire for one. So does anyone even want to see a sequel? And if they do, how can we make sure it either does the same success or possibly improve on the success of the first ones? Another purpose of analysing the research is we can see what kind of product reach something is going to have. So it's looking at how many people are going to actually see this product and how many people are going to consume it, how many people are going to purchase tickets in the cinema or buy Blu-rays, DVDs, CDs, whatever it is that you're selling. Another purpose of research is to try and see what your competitors are doing and who they are. So sometimes you might research into what audiences think about products owned by direct competitors. For example, Amazon Prime might ask their audience, what do they like about Netflix, or what don't they like about Netflix? Companies like the BBC and ITV are constantly using online technologies to conduct focus groups, interviews and surveys about what people think of their major soap storylines, and that allows them to kind of develop what's going on. One example could be a long time ago in things like EastEnders, they didn't really have much multicultural storylines going on. And by conducting online focus groups and surveys, people kind of expressed an unhappiness at this and wanted to see a little bit more diversity and more multicultural storylines. And that's why you see a lot of different families from different ethnicities and countries and things in EastEnders now. There's also a company called Digital Spy, which gives producers a link to what the viewers think about them. Another reason for carrying out research is to gather some advantages and disadvantages for the production of a particular product. And two methods that you can use for this are SWOT and PEST analysis. SWOT analysis is predominantly used within all different types of media to analyse what the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats are for a particular product. Basically gives the producers the chance to change their mind or to enhance their success by getting rid of any potential weaknesses, but also to exploit any opportunities that might arise. This is an example analysis, SWOT analysis of the Netflix company. So it's looking at all of the different strengths, their weaknesses, any opportunities and the threats. Just take a minute to kind of analyse through this and you'll be able to see what kind of stuff takes place during a SWOT analysis. A PEST analysis does a similar kind of thing but for different subheadings. So this looks at things more from a political, economical, social and technological viewpoint. It basically helps us to see if a project is viable or not. There's another example of a PEST, but this is also for Netflix, but obviously you can see by studying all the different points how it works differently to a SWOT analysis. It helps in a better way to kind of look at things more from a social point of view. What might people's reactions be to these different products that you're putting on? This section is about analysing audience research. What can we do with the data and how do we analyse it? So for this learning outcome, you need to be able to analyse the data yourself. And we touched a little bit on this in learning outcome 4 as well. But this is an example kind of question that you're going to be looking at. So basically, when it comes to analysing the data, you need to think about why companies must do it in the first place, with all the purposes that we've just gone through. But also, we need to be able to do it ourselves. So quantitative data is really useful for analysing age ranges, gender, social class, all that kind of information. And you can quickly kind of use that information to make graphs, infographics and psychographics, which we learn in Learn Outcome 4. So what we need to do is be able to look at quantitative data and be able to make assumptions based on that information. So this is an example of data that you get from one of the exams, can't remember, I think it's 2016 maybe. This is the insert on the left hand side and this is the questions from the question paper. So what I've done is I've highlighted in particular colours the bits that you're going to need to look at. Across the top, this is where people start getting a little bit confused and they're not entirely sure what the information means. So I'm just going to make it incredibly simple for you really. Across the top, you can see that the number of adults that are in the population and the number of adults that were in the sample. And each one of these, you've got to add 3 zeros onto the end. So in other words, you're talking like 52 million people are the estimated population of 15 pluses in the country. Then you're looking at the sample. The sample was out of 27 million people. Then you look at the percentages of ABC1, C2DE, 15 to 34 and 35 plus. They often provide statistics on gender as well, and all of these are in millions or hundreds of thousands, whatever. You've got to add 3 zeros onto the end of each figure, and then you've got your percentages. Now, what you've got to think of is that these percentages are out of 100%, so you're adding up all of the numbers going across and all of the numbers going down, and eventually it gets to 100%. So it's the percentage of the readers in total rather than the percentage readers for that particular product. So if you're looking at this and your head's just falling off, right, all you've got to do is be able to compare two numbers and look whether one is bigger than the other. So let's have a little look. Explain two interpretations that could be made about the target audience of the Daily Express. So I've highlighted the Daily Express in yellow. Two interpretations, it just wants you to be able to look at the numbers and try and make some sort of sensible point. So in other words, we look at ABC1 and C2DE. The number percentage for those two columns are only slightly different. So one interpretation, you could literally say that the readership of the Daily Express is fairly balanced in terms of the social class. If you said that they are slightly more ABC1 percentage, that is also correct. Then what you could look at is the age range for the second interpretation. 0.4 compared to 2.2. So what we can see from that is that a lot more of the readers are over 35. That's all you've got to do. You pick out what you actually see in the data for one mark and explain what that means for the other mark. Identify two differences in the readerships of the Daily Telegraph and the Guardian. So I've highlighted the Guardian in blue and the Daily Telegraph in purple. What I've done is circled where I think there is some sort of important information to look at. So one thing we could look at for the Daily Telegraph, we're looking for two differences, and all you've got to do is identify them. So one, I would say that the Daily Telegraph has much older audience because it's 3% compared to 0.8% for over 35s. However, the Guardian is fairly balanced, 1.4 to 1.8, so there's another difference. Then you could also look at the social class. You can see that the only other major difference is that the social class is slightly different. You could also say that the Daily Telegraph seems to have a lot larger audience than the Guardian. Here's another example set of data. This time it's for magazine consumption. So similar questions, explain two interpretations about the target audience of Heat magazine. Identify two differences in the readerships of OK and Pick Me Up. Almost identical question to before. See if you can do it yourself. Look at the data, try and pick out the key bits of information for Heat magazine, OK and Pick Me Up, and try and answer those questions yourself.